Marcus Chen wiped grease from his weathered hands as he stepped out of his garage workshop. The desert heat of New Nevada hit him like a wall. But after 15 years of running, the only Starship repair facility for 300 miles, he barely noticed anymore. His daughter Emma would be home from school soon, and he wanted to finish calibrating the plasma injectors on the cargo hauler before then. The sound of screaming metal and atmospheric entry made him look up. A ship was coming in too fast, too steep. Black smoke trailed behind the craft as it struggled to maintain stable flight. Marcus had seen enough emergency landings to know this one was going to be rough. He grabbed his emergency kit and jumped into his hover truck, racing toward the impact site. The alien vessel had carved a deep furrow in the red sand, coming to rest against a cluster of desert rocks. Steam hissed from ruptured coolant lines, and the hull glowed cherry red from atmospheric friction. As Marcus approached, he could see it was unlike any design he'd worked on before. The ship had elegant curves that seemed to flow like liquid metal, with propulsion systems he didn't recognize. A hatch opened with a grinding sound, and a figure stumbled out. Marcus's breath caught. She was humanoid, but clearly not human. Her skin had a subtle blue-gray tint, and intricate silver patterns traced along her arms and face like living tattoos. Her hair was white as starlight, and her eyes held an otherworldly intelligence. She wore a form-fitting flight suit that looked more like living tissue than fabric. She collapsed to her knees, clutching her side. Dark fluid seeped between her fingers, and Marcus realized she was badly injured. Without hesitation, he rushed to her side. "Easy there," he said gently, offering his shoulder for support. "I'm Marcus. I run the repair shop. Let me help you." She looked up at him with violet eyes that held both wariness and desperation. When she spoke, her voice had a melodic quality, but the words were clearly translated by some kind of device. "You are human," she said, as if the word carried weight he couldn't understand. "Guilty as charged. What's your name?" She hesitated, then replied, "Zara. My ship. It needs repair. The hunters found me." Marcus helped her to her feet, noticing how she moved with grace despite her injuries. "Hunters? That doesn't sound good. Let's get you patched up first. Then we'll worry about your ship." "No," she said urgently, gripping his arm with surprising strength. "The ship first. If they track me here, your world will burn. Humans cannot defend against the collective." Something in her tone made Marcus's blood run cold. He'd heard whispers of conflicts in the outer systems, but Earth and its colonies had remained largely isolated from galactic politics. Now it seemed those politics had crash-landed in his backyard. "All right, ship first," he agreed. "But you're going to sit down and let me look at that wound while I assess the damage." Zara nodded reluctantly as Marcus guided her to the shade of his hover truck. He pulled out his medical kit and began cleaning the gash in her side. The wound was deep but clean, and her blood had an unusual silver sheen to it. "This might sting," he warned, applying antiseptic. To her credit, Zara didn't even flinch. "You show kindness to a stranger. This is unexpected. Where I come from, we help people in trouble. Species doesn't matter." Something flickered across her features that might have been surprise. "Your species is young. Most races learn to fear others before they learn compassion." Marcus finished bandaging her wound and moved to examine her ship. The damage was extensive, but not beyond repair. The main drive coupling had been severed, several hull plates had buckled, and the navigation array looked like it had been hit by weapons fire. "This is going to take some work," he said, running his scanner over the hull. "Maybe 3 days if I can find compatible parts." "What exactly are these hunters?" Zara's expression darkened. "Enforcers for the Galactic Collective. They hunt those who defy the order they impose across the stars. I carry something they want very badly." "What kind of something?" She was quiet for a long moment, studying his face as if trying to decide whether to trust him. "Proof of their crimes. Evidence that could shatter their control over dozens of worlds." Marcus felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. "And if they catch you here, they will glass your world from orbit." "Humans are not part of the collective, so you have no protection under their laws. To them, you are primitives whose lives have no value. The casual way she said it chilled him to the bone. Marcus thought about Emma, about all the families in the nearby settlements. Then we better make sure they don't catch you. Over the next few hours, Marcus worked with an urgency he'd never felt before. Zara proved to be remarkably knowledgeable about her ship's systems, despite their alien design. She guided him through the complex repairs while keeping watch for any signs of pursuit. "Your hands," she observed as he carefully realigned a quantum resonator. "They work like an artist's." Most mechanics in the galaxy would have destroyed that component by now. Marcus chuckled. "My ex-wife used to say the same thing. Course, she was usually complaining that I spent more time with machines than people. She left? Cancer took her 3 years ago. It's just me and Emma now." He paused in his work, a shadow crossing his features. "Emma's 12. Loves to help in the shop, though I try to keep her focused on school. You raise her alone? It's not easy, but we make it work. She's smart as a whip, reminds me of her mother every day." Zara was quiet for a moment. "Among my people, children are raised by the community. I cannot imagine the strength it takes to bear that responsibility alone. You do what you have to do for family." As the day wore on, Marcus found himself oddly comfortable working alongside Zara. Despite their obvious differences, she had a dry sense of humor and asked thoughtful questions about human culture. In return, she told him about the vast galactic civilization that existed beyond Earth's knowledge. "Why haven't your people made contact with us?" Marcus asked, as he welded a hull patch. "The collective forbids it. They control which species are allowed to advance, which are kept primitive, and which are eliminated. Humanity's independence makes you a threat to their order. We're barely capable of interstellar travel. How could we be a threat?" Zara smiled, and for the first time it seemed genuine. "You helped a stranger without asking what you would gain. You risk your world for someone you just met. Do you not see how dangerous such thinking would be to those who rule through fear?" Marcus hadn't thought of kindness as revolutionary, but he supposed it might seem that way to a tyrannical government. As the sun began to set, painting the desert in shades of orange and red, Marcus heard the familiar hum of the school transport approaching. Emma would be home soon. "I need to get my daughter settled for the night," he said, setting down his tools. "We can continue in the morning." Zara nodded. "I will keep watch." "The hunters prefer to attack at night." Marcus hesitated. "You could come inside, have a real meal, get some rest." "That is kind, but I cannot put your child at risk. You're injured and exhausted." Emma's seen plenty of stranded spacers over the years. She won't ask questions you don't want to answer. After a moment's consideration, Zara agreed. Marcus led her toward the house, just as Emma's transport landed in their front yard. His daughter bounded out with her usual energy, her dark hair bouncing as she ran toward him. "Dad, Mrs. Peterson says there was a ship crash today. Did you see it?" Emma stopped short when she noticed Zara standing behind Marcus. Her eyes went wide, but not with fear. If anything, she looked fascinated. "Emma, this is Zara. She's a pilot whose ship needs repair." "Wow," Emma breathed. "You're beautiful. Are you from one of the outer colonies?" Zara looked uncertain how to respond. "Something like that." "Emma, why don't you help Zara get cleaned up while I make dinner? She's had a rough day." As Marcus prepared a simple meal, he could hear Emma chattering away in the next room, bombarding Zara with questions about space travel and different worlds. Zara's responses were patient and kind, though carefully vague about specifics. During dinner, Marcus watched his daughter's face light up as Zara described distant stars and impossible landscapes. Emma had always dreamed of seeing the galaxy, and having a real spacer at their table was like a dream come true for her. "Do you have kids?" Emma asked innocently. Zara's expression grew sad. "I did. A daughter. Not much older than you. The collective took her when I refused to join them." Emma's face fell. "That's terrible. I'm sorry. She is why I fight them, so that other children will not suffer as she has." Marcus felt his heart ache for this woman who had lost so much. He thought about what he would do if anyone tried to take Emma from him, and he understood the fire he saw in Zara's eyes. After dinner, Marcus tucked Emma into bed while Zara stood guard outside. When he returned, he found her sitting on his porch, gazing up at the stars. "Thank you," she said quietly. "It has been long since I sat at a family table." "You're welcome anytime." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, each lost in their own thoughts. Finally, Zara spoke again. "Marcus, when my ship is repaired, you should take your daughter and leave this place. Go somewhere remote. Somewhere the collective will not look. This is our home. The hunters will come. If not for me, then eventually they will come anyway. Humanity's time of hiding is ending." Marcus studied her profile in the starlight. What if there was another way? What if instead of running, we stood and fought? Zara turned to look at him with surprise. One world against a galactic empire? That is noble but futile. Maybe. But you said it yourself. Humans are different. We don't think like the rest of the galaxy. Maybe that's exactly what this collective is afraid of. Before Zara could respond, alarms began blaring from her ship. They both leaped to their feet as warning lights bathed the desert in red. "They found me," Zara said grimly. "The hunters are coming." Marcus grabbed his rifle from inside the house and checked the charge. "How long do we have?" "Minutes at most. My ship cannot fly, and yours cannot outrun theirs. Then we make our stand here." Zara stared at him in disbelief. "You would die for someone you just met?" "I'd die to protect my daughter. Right now that means stopping these hunters from leaving here alive." In the distance, the first hunter ship appeared as a dark shadow against the stars, descending toward them with deadly purpose. Marcus felt fear grip his heart, but also a strange sense of calm. Whatever happened next, he would face it standing up. "Zara, I need you to promise me something." "What?" "If this goes bad, if I don't make it, you get Emma off this world. Keep her safe." Zara met his eyes and nodded solemnly. "I promise." The hunter ship touched down 200 meters away, and armored figures began pouring out. Their weapons gleamed in the moonlight as they advanced across the sand. Marcus checked his rifle one last time and prepared to face an enemy beyond imagination. Tonight, a simple mechanic would stand against a galactic empire. The odds were impossible. But sometimes, impossible was exactly what the universe needed. The hunter soldiers advanced in perfect formation across the desert sand, their armor gleaming like black mirrors in the moonlight. Marcus counted at least 20 of them, each carrying weapons that hummed with barely contained energy. At their head walked a figure taller than the rest, with glowing red sensors where eyes should be. Zara of House Veltar, the lead hunter's voice boomed across the desert through a translation device. "You have violated collective law by stealing classified data. Surrender now, and your death will be swift." Zara stepped forward, placing herself between the hunters and Marcus's house where Emma slept. "I took nothing that was not already mine. Executor Vash. The people of the galaxy have a right to know what the collective does in their name." The executor tilted his head, red sensors focusing on Marcus. "A primitive world. How fitting that your rebellion should end among savages. Step aside, human. This does not concern your kind." Marcus raised his rifle, the targeting sight trembling slightly in his grip. "My world. My rules. You're trespassing." A sound like grinding metal emerged from Vash's voice box, which Marcus realized was laughter. "One primitive with an energy rifle believes he can stand against the collective? Your species truly is as foolish as our reports suggest." "Maybe," Marcus replied, taking careful aim. "But we're also stubborn as hell." The first shot took Vash completely by surprise. Marcus's rifle beam punched through the executor's shoulder armor, spinning him around and dropping him to one knee. The other hunters froze in shock. In all their experience, primitives cowered before the collective's might. They never fought back. That moment of hesitation cost them dearly. Zara moved with fluid grace, drawing a weapon that looked more like crystalline sculpture than gun. Her shots were precise and deadly, dropping 3 hunters before they could react. Marcus kept firing, his years of hunting desert predators serving him well as he picked his targets. but there were too many. The hunters recovered from their surprise and began advancing again, their return fire turning sand to glass around Marcus and Zara. They retreated toward the garage, using Marcus's equipment as cover. "This is hopeless," Zara called over the sound of energy bolts. "We cannot hold them all." Marcus reloaded his rifle with practiced speed. "We just need to keep them busy long enough." Long enough for what? Before Marcus could answer, the night erupted in new light. A beam of coherent energy lanced down from orbit, striking the center of the hunter formation. When the glare faded, 5 of the enemy soldiers had been vaporized, leaving only fused glass where they had stood. Executor Vash struggled to his feet, his damaged armor sparking. He looked up at the sky in disbelief. Impossible. No primitive world has orbital defense platforms. Marcus grinned fiercely. "You're right. We don't." High above, running lights became visible as 3 ships dropped out of stealth mode. They were human vessels, sleek and angular, bearing the insignia of Earth's colonial defense force. The lead ship opened a communication channel, and a familiar voice filled the air. "This is Captain Sarah Mitchell of the CDF Determination. You are in violation of human space. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." Zara stared at Marcus in amazement. How did they know to come? They didn't. I triggered our emergency beacon when the alarm started. Standard protocol for any hostile contact. Marcus's expression grew grim. What's not standard is how fast they got here. They must have been close. Real close. The truth was more complex than Marcus realized. For months, Earth's intelligence services had been tracking increased collective activity near human space. They had scout ships positioned throughout the border regions, ready to respond to any incursion. When Marcus's beacon activated, they were already moving. Executor Vash activated his own communications, speaking in the harsh language of the collective. Within moments, more ships began dropping out of hyperspace above the desert. The night sky filled with the running lights of 2 fleets facing off against each other. Primitive vessels. Vash. Broadcast to the human ships. You face the might of the galactic collective. Withdraw or be destroyed. Captain Mitchell's response was calm and controlled. We've withdrawn before. Not tonight. The space battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had seen in centuries. The collective had grown complacent, used to facing enemies who fought with their tactics, their technology, their mindset. Humans fought differently. Where collective ships relied on massive shields and overwhelming firepower, human vessels were fast and unpredictable. They used the asteroid belt and the planet's magnetosphere as weapons, turning space itself into their ally. They fought with desperate creativity, knowing their homeworld lay only a few jumps away. On the ground, Marcus and Zara found themselves in a running battle with the remaining hunters. The soldiers were skilled and experienced, but they had never faced humans before. Marcus fought like a man protecting his family, which he was. Every shot had to count. Every movement had to be perfect. Zara watched in growing amazement as Marcus turned his repair shop into a fortress. He used his knowledge of machinery to create traps and obstacles, channeling the hunters into killing zones where his limited ammunition could have maximum effect. When his rifle finally ran dry, he switched to tools, wielding a plasma cutter like a sword. "Your species," Zara panted as they took cover behind an overturned hoverlifter. "They fight like demons." "We fight for what matters," Marcus replied, checking his remaining power cells. "Family matters. Freedom matters. Some things are worth dying for." A hunter rounded the corner, weapon raised. Marcus tackled the soldier, driving his plasma cutter through a gap in the armor. The hunter fell, but not before his shot caught Marcus in the shoulder, spinning him around. Zara caught him as he stumbled, her hands glowing with some kind of medical energy that numbed the pain and slowed the bleeding. "You are injured badly. I'll live." "What about Emma?" They both turned toward the house, where light now spilled from the windows. Emma stood in the doorway. But she wasn't alone. Behind her, Marcus could see his neighbors, armed and ready. Old Pete from the trading post carried his hunting rifle. The Morrison family had brought their entire arsenal. Even young Dr. Sanders held a medical kit in one hand and a pulse pistol in the other. Dad always said the first rule of the frontier is that neighbors help neighbors, Emma called out, her voice steady despite her obvious fear. Mrs. Morrison called everyone when the shooting started. Executor Vash emerged from behind the crashed shuttle, his armor smoking and his sensors flickering erratically. Despite his injuries, he moved with deadly purpose, his weapon trained on Emma. Enough, he snarled. The child dies first. Then the rest of you primitives will learn the price of defying the collective. Marcus tried to stand, but his wounded shoulder wouldn't support him. Zara raised her weapon. But Vash was too far away, too well protected by cover. That's when Emma stepped forward, holding something in her hands. "Hey, ugly," she called out with all the fearless confidence of a 12-year-old. "Catch!" She threw the object toward Vash, and Marcus's heart stopped when he realized what it was. Emma had grabbed one of his experimental plasma grenades from the workshop. The device wasn't even tested yet. Vash caught the grenade automatically, then stared at it in confusion. The crude human construction meant nothing to his sensors. The explosion vaporized a 20-foot circle of sand and took Executor Vash with it. In the sudden silence that followed, Marcus stared at his daughter in amazement. "Where did you learn to do that?" Emma shrugged with studied casualness. "You always said timing is everything in engineering, Dad." Above them, the space battle was ending. The human fleet had taken heavy losses, but they had achieved something unprecedented. 3 collective dreadnoughts drifted as dead hulks, their crews either dead or fleeing in escape pods. The remaining collective ships were retreating toward the jump point, unwilling to face the suicidal determination of human tactics. Captain Mitchell's voice crackled over the communication channel. "Ground team, report status. Hostiles eliminated," Marcus replied, still staring at his daughter in amazement. "We have a wounded, friendly, and critical intelligence. Roger that. Medical and recovery teams inbound. Outstanding work down there." As dawn broke over the desert, Marcus sat on his porch with his arm in a sling, watching recovery teams catalog the wreckage. Zara sat beside him, her own injuries treated by human medics who marveled at her alien physiology. "This changes everything," she said quietly. "The collective believed humans were harmless primitives. Now they know better." "Are you saying we just started a galactic war?" "No," Zara replied with a slight smile. "You just ended one. The other subject races will hear what happened here. They will know that the collective can be defeated." Emma bounded up to them, her earlier fear replaced by excitement. "Dad, Captain Mitchell says they're going to need consultants to help understand alien technology. She thinks you'd be perfect for the job." Marcus looked at his daughter, then at Zara, then up at the sky where human ships now patrolled. His quiet life as a frontier mechanic was over, but maybe that wasn't such a bad thing. "What do you think?" he asked Zara. "Could you use a partner in this rebellion of yours?" "A human partner might be exactly what the galaxy needs," she replied. "Though I should warn you, the work is dangerous." Emma grinned. "Dad's not afraid of dangerous, right, Dad?" Marcus stood up, wincing slightly at the pain in his shoulder. "Right. Besides, someone needs to teach the galaxy what humans are really capable of." In his pocket, the photo he'd noticed on Zara's console earlier seemed to pulse with new meaning. The little girl in the image looked so much like Emma, and Marcus was beginning to understand that some coincidences weren't coincidences at all. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity didn't just fight for themselves. They fought for everyone who couldn't fight back. They fought for family, even when that family included species they'd never met before. And that, Marcus realized, was exactly what would make them unstoppable. 3 months after the battle that would later be known as the Desert Stand, Marcus Chen found himself aboard the CDF command ship Defiance, staring out at a sight he'd never imagined. Dozens of alien vessels hung in space around them, representing 17 different species that had risen against the collective after word of humanity's victory spread through the galaxy. Emma pressed her face against the viewing port beside him, her eyes wide with wonder. At 12 years old, she was the youngest member of the newly formed Galactic Liberation Alliance, though her title of Special Advisor on Human Engineering Principles was mostly honorary. "Mostly. Dad, look at that one," Emma pointed to a ship that seemed to be made entirely of living crystal. Zara says it's from the resonance worlds. They communicate by singing to their technology. Marcus smiled, watching his daughter's enthusiasm. The past 3 months had changed everything for them. What started as a simple repair job had evolved into something that would reshape the galaxy. Emma had adapted to their new life with the resilience of youth, learning alien languages and customs with frightening speed. Zara approached them from across the observation deck, her appearance subtly different than when they'd first met. The stress lines around her eyes had softened, and she moved with the confidence of someone who had found hope again. She wore the deep blue uniform of the Alliance, with insignia that marked her as a senior intelligence officer. "The Council is ready for the final briefing," she told Marcus. "Are you prepared for this?" Marcus nodded, though his stomach churned with nervousness. Today they would present the complete intelligence package that Zara had died to steal from the collective. Today the galaxy would learn the full truth about their oppressors. They made their way to the main conference room, where representatives from across the galaxy had gathered. Some were humanoid, like Zara, while others were so alien that Marcus needed translation software just to understand their basic physiology. What united them all was the look of determination in whatever served as their eyes. Captain Mitchell stood at the head of the table, her uniform bearing new insignia that marked her as the Alliance's military coordinator. She had aged years in the past months, bearing the weight of command for an impossible coalition. But her voice remained steady as she called the meeting to order. "Ladies, gentlemen, and respected beings," she began. 3 months ago, a lone mechanic and a fugitive pilot changed the course of history. Today we learn exactly what we've been fighting for. She gestured to Zara, who stepped forward and activated the holographic display. The room filled with images and data streams that made even experienced intelligence officers gasp in shock. "For 3,000 years," Zara began, "the Galactic Collective has maintained control through a carefully crafted lie. They present themselves as benevolent guardians, protecting primitive species from the dangers of rapid advancement. In reality, they are a parasitic empire that feeds on the resources and labor of subject worlds." The display showed system after system under collective control, with data streams indicating resource flows, population statistics, and economic indicators. The pattern was clear and horrifying, but that is not their greatest crime, Zara continued. The collective has been actively suppressing species development for millennia. Any race that shows signs of technological independence or military potential is either absorbed or eliminated entirely. Marcus watched the faces around the table grow grim as the scope of the collective's crimes became clear. Entire civilizations had been wiped from existence simply for being too creative or too independent. "The evidence you're seeing came at a terrible cost." Zara's voice grew thick with emotion. 17 intelligence operatives died gathering this data. Among them was my daughter, Kira. She gestured, and the display showed a young woman who looked remarkably like a blue-skinned version of Emma. The resemblance was so striking that several council members glanced between Kira's image and Emma with obvious confusion. "She infiltrated a collective research facility on Proxima 7, Zara continued. "What she found there changed everything we thought we knew about the galaxy's history." The display shifted to show laboratory footage that made Marcus's blood run cold. Collective scientists were conducting experiments on captured members of various species, testing their responses to different threats and challenges. The research was clearly aimed at understanding how to manipulate species development. "They have been guiding evolution itself," one of the crystal beings sang in harmonics that the translator rendered as horrified disgust. "Shaping our very nature to serve their purposes." "There's more," Zara said grimly. "Show them the Earth files, Kira." The voice that responded from the computer system made Emma gasp and grab Marcus's arm. It was young, intelligent, and unmistakably similar to Emma's own voice. "Hello, everyone. My name is Kira. And if you're hearing this, then I didn't make it out alive. But the data I'm about to show you will explain why I was willing to die for it." The holographic display filled with classified collective documents bearing Earth's designation and stellar coordinates. Marcus felt his world turn upside down as the implications became clear. The collective has been monitoring Earth for over 2 centuries, Kira's recorded voice continued. They classified humanity as a Class 7 evolutionary threat, the highest danger rating in their system. But instead of eliminating humans, they chose to contain them. The documents showed a detailed plan spanning generations. The collective had been subtly influencing human development, steering them away from certain technologies and discoveries that might lead to rapid advancement. Every major war, every economic crisis, every political upheaval had been carefully orchestrated to keep humanity focused inward instead of reaching for the stars. They were afraid, Kira explained. Humanity's psychological profile showed traits they had never encountered before. Extreme adaptability, pack loyalty that extended beyond genetic lines. And most dangerous of all, a tendency to sacrifice themselves for abstract principles like freedom and justice. Marcus felt the room's attention focus on him and Emma. They were no longer just Alliance members. They were specimens representing their entire species. The plan was to keep humanity contained until the collective could develop countermeasures for human psychology. They never expected one of their own operatives to crash land on a human world. Emma squeezed Marcus's hand as Kira's voice took on a warmer tone. When I learned that my mother's escape route would take her through human space, I knew this was our chance. I embedded specific data in her ship's navigation system that would ensure she crashed near a place where humans would find her. I chose carefully, looking for someone who embodied the best of human nature. The display showed Marcus's own file, compiled from surveillance data the collective had gathered over years. His service record, his work as a mechanic, his devotion to Emma after his wife's death, even his history of helping stranded travelers without asking for payment. Marcus Chen represents everything the collective fears about humanity, Kira continued. He is a protector, an innovator, and someone who will sacrifice everything for those he considers family. I knew that if my mother crashed near him, he would help her, and I knew that meeting humans would change her as much as it changed them. Zara wiped tears from her eyes as her daughter's voice filled the room with impossible warmth and love. Mom, I know you're hearing this. I know you survived. Because you're strong and smart and because humans wouldn't let anything happen to you once they decided you were family. That's what makes them special. They adopt the whole galaxy if you let them. The recording paused, and when Kira spoke again, her voice carried the weight of absolute conviction. The collective believes that control and fear are the only ways to maintain galactic stability. They're wrong. I've studied human history, and I've seen what they can accomplish when they work together. They ended slavery on their own world. They've been gradually eliminating poverty and disease. They've learned to see past surface differences to the common bonds that unite all thinking beings. Emma was crying now, and Marcus realized that his own eyes were wet. Around the table, beings from a dozen different worlds sat in stunned silence as they absorbed the magnitude of what they were learning. The data package I'm transmitting contains everything, Kira's voice continued. Collective fleet deployments, resource allocation, psychological profiles of their leadership, and most importantly, the locations of other worlds they're planning to eliminate. You have the tools to free the galaxy. All you need is the courage to use them. The recording ended, leaving the conference room in profound silence. Finally, Captain Mitchell spoke. Questions. An elderly being that looked like a walking tree raised one of his branch arms. The human child, Emma. Her resemblance to Kira is remarkable. Is this coincidence? Zara looked at Marcus and Emma with something like wonder in her violet eyes. I don't think so. Kira was brilliant. But she was also sentimental. She had access to genetic databases for thousands of species. If she wanted to choose humans who would remind me of her, she could have found them. Emma looked up at Marcus with wide eyes. She picked us? Kira made sure we would meet? It appears so, Zara said gently. She knew I had lost hope. She knew I needed to remember why we fight, so she sent me to meet a father who would do anything to protect his daughter, and a daughter who reminded me of my own. Marcus felt the pieces clicking together in his mind. That's why you trusted us so quickly. Why you stayed for dinner instead of keeping watch. Some part of you recognized Emma from the beginning, My daughter reached across space and time to introduce me to a new family, Zara said, her voice thick with emotion. She saved us all by teaching me to hope again. The crystal being sang a harmony that the translator rendered as profound respect. The young one orchestrated the liberation of the galaxy from beyond death. Remarkable. Over the next several hours, the council reviewed battle plans, resource allocation, and diplomatic strategies. The evidence Kira had died to gather would be transmitted to every world in the galaxy, sparking uprisings from the core systems to the frontier. The collective's web of lies was unraveling, and there would be no stopping what came next. As the meeting finally ended and representatives returned to their ships, Marcus found himself alone with Zara on the observation deck. Emma had fallen asleep in one of the chairs, exhausted by the emotional intensity of the day. "What happens now?" Marcus asked, watching the alien ships prepare for hyperspace jumps that would carry them to battlefields across the galaxy. "We finish what Kira started," Zara replied. "We free every world, every species, every being that the collective has oppressed. And we make sure it never happens again. That's going to take more than military victories. We need to prove there's a better way." Zara smiled, the expression transforming her alien features into something achingly familiar. "That's why we need humans. You don't just fight tyranny, you build something better in its place. You turn enemies into allies, strangers into family." Marcus looked down at Emma, sleeping peacefully despite being surrounded by alien technology and beings from across the galaxy. She had adapted to this new reality with the fearless curiosity that seemed to define humanity at its best. Kira was right about us, wasn't she? "We do tend to adopt the whole galaxy." "The whole galaxy," Zara agreed, "and we're grateful for it." As Marcus carried Emma back to their quarters, he thought about the long road ahead. The war against the collective would be brutal and costly. Billions of lives hung in the balance, and there was no guarantee that freedom would triumph over tyranny. But for the first time since his wife's death, Marcus felt like he was part of something larger than himself. Kira had died to bring them all together, to create a family that spanned species and star systems. She had given them the tools to change the galaxy, but more importantly, she had given them the hope to try. In the quiet of the ship's corridors, Marcus whispered a promise to a young woman he had never met, but who had changed his life forever. "We won't let you down, Kira. We'll make sure your sacrifice meant something. We'll build the galaxy you dreamed of." Behind them, the last of the Allied ships disappeared into hyperspace, carrying the fire of rebellion to 1,000 worlds. The galaxy would never be the same. And it was all because a dying girl had looked at the stars and decided that love was stronger than fear. The age of the collective was ending. The age of freedom was about to begin.